Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Clinic Growth Secret Show, where we teach you how to get more patients, make more profit per patient, and keep them as long as humanly possible. We have a I'm going to say, very transformational guest. I'm going to lead with that word today because that's going to be the theme of the episode. You guys are going to get quite a bit of value as we go into the new year, 2025, in terms of getting your mindset right. If you're currently over hitting some obstacles and you're just looking to get past that, this is really going to be an episode that's going to help you a lot. So before we get into the good stuff, remember that we do have a fee. The fee is simple. We don't ask for your credit card or any sort of monetary donations, although if you want to hit me on Venmo, I can certainly give you that. We ask that if you get value, which I know you will today, pay it forward. Share the show. Hit somebody up in your family. Hit a colleague up. Be like, yo, dude, I know you've been going through some stuff. Like, you need to listen to this show. It means the world to us. We do grow organically by word of mouth around here. That is how we grow. So if you find the valuable lessons, make sure to share it forward. I'm excited to welcome our guest today. He's really a chiropractor transformed into a transformational speaker, a two-time TEDx speaker, host of the Mindset Doctor podcast, where he interviews total badasses, both inside and outside the profession, for overcoming strategies on fear, overcoming obstacles, and unlocking one's full potential. Welcome to the show, Dr. Justin Moseley. Great to have you, sir.
Jeff, brother, excited to be here. Always enjoy connecting with you. So excited for today.
Man, you're just the guy to have on here. I'm hyped to have you, man. In fact, you really have one of the kind of the bigger modern voices, I would say, in the chiropractic and even outside the chiropractic space. You've really been kind of blowing up your Instagram, blowing up your social media, and I can see why. I mean, you've got such an elegant platform. Well, here's what I know is that you've done two TED Talks now. One of them just crossed. We were just talking right now. They just crossed 175,000 views. So congrats on that, big time.
Thank you, man.
And you've delivered over 1,500 presentations. Obviously, this is not, you don't start out as a legend. And I want to hear your backstory and kind of how you've made this transition from chiropractor, practicing DC, to then actually transformational speaker. Let's start there for the listeners.
Yeah, so I'm a chiropractor. My wife's a chiropractor as well. We still have a clinic outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Opened our practice in 2012 and just built family practice, large practice, helping people, serving the community. And then fast forward 2018, I went on a men's retreat and we went whitewater rafting, hit some class 5 rapids. And it was just a freak accident. I was sitting on the back of the raft and the raft tipped over and I got trapped underneath the rapid itself. And the rapid started pushing me underwater. And I still remember the sound of my helmet scraping down the rocks as I was being pushed underwater. The last thing I remember thinking is, I'm not coming back up. And then everything went black, and then everything went bright white. And it was the most peaceful, serene feeling I'd ever felt. And I don't know how long I was unconscious, but I heard a voice that said, "Wake up." And thankfully I did, because I came back to consciousness and I was trapped underwater, wedged between two rocks. And I tried to push and I didn't budge. And I kept pushing and pushing. And then thankfully my adrenaline kicked in and I was able to push hard enough. I broke one of the buckles on my life jacket that was trapped underneath the rock and floated to the top, gasped for breath, got swept down the river. And man, at that point I was rocked. Like, what just happened? And we all question our purpose in life at some point. Like, why are we here? What's the purpose of all this? But in that moment, I asked a different question. I said, why am I still here? Because things could have been different in that moment. Like, what if I didn't hear wake up? Or what if I wasn't strong enough to break free? So I asked myself, why am I still here? And one of the things that came to me was, man, I've gotten comfortable in life because practice was good, marriage was good, traveling, enjoying life. But I realized I'm playing way too small. And if I truly want to step into the calling that's on my life, I need to exchange my comfort for my calling. So for me, man, another thing that I was actually sitting on the side of the river after this happened. And again, if you've been like in a car wreck, something that just it really rocks you, you know that adrenaline is just racing afterwards and you're like trying to process it. And I remember asking myself, I was like, if it all would have ended in that moment, is this the legacy I want to leave? And the answer was no. And what still drives me to this day is I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize, man, I could have done more. I could have become more. I could have helped more people, or I could have made a bigger impact. So it still drives me to this day. So after that, I kind of reassessed. I was like, yes, I'm making a difference. I'm living my purpose, helping people, but I'm playing way too small. So instead of having the mindset of I'm going to transform my community, I was like, man, I can transform lives all over the world. So I just started putting out content on mindset, leadership, personal development, business, marketing, all the things that I loved. I was like, I'm just going to put it out there. And I was like, but I don't know if anybody's going to listen. Jeff, I don't know if you ever felt that of like, man, I'm just going to put it out there. We'll see what
Man,
happens.
100%.
But the first of 2020, actually, January 2020, I started a Facebook group and it grew to 1,000 people in the first month. So I was like, oh,
Wow.
well, people are listening, they're showing up, and it just kept opening more doors and leading to kind of speaking all over. I've now spoken all over the US and then internationally as well, and led to doing 2 TED Talks. And just really, that's kind of my heart now is, man, how can I just help make a positive impact in the lives of others? And yeah, that's what I'm all about, man.
That's brilliant, man. That's amazing. And you made your first, you say you made your first content January 2020. That's how long the journey's been going on for you.
Yeah, man, I just started showing up live in a Facebook group. Every
So
week I
cool.
would interview a new guest, kind of like we're doing now, just having this conversation. But
Yeah.
and Facebook has changed so much, man. I remember back then the first live I did, a 2 hour long live, there were still 200 people on at the end of the live. Like it was crazy because Facebook was pumping people to their groups back then. But man, I was just showing up and I just kept Gary V style, document, don't create. Don't try to think of what I need to post. Just, man, just start putting stuff out there. And that's kind of what I've done this whole time. Like, man, just put it out there, put it out there. Go back to that BJ Palmer quote. You never know how far reaching something you may think, say, or do today can affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And cool thing, I actually got to share that quote on my latest TED Talk. So I think I'm the only chiropractor that's had a BJ Palmer quote in their TED Talk. So that
That's cool.
was kind
That's
of cool.
cool. You're repping the home base, man. I love that's
That's right.
absolutely brilliant. And you've kind of branded yourself as people always think about one word and that is motivational. Like they're a
Mm,
motivational speaker, right? But you've kind
yeah.
of more so branded yourself like, sure, there's motivation in there. I mean, you're a motivated guy to listen to, But you talked about being a transformational speaker.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about what the major difference in that and what you're hoping to get the viewers to actually like do with the content?
Right. Cause yeah, motivation, it fades. Like you can pump yourself up to go to the gym short term. Definitely. I mean, we see this all the time with the new year happening. I'm going to make the resolutions. I'm going to get fired up and motivated. And the motivation dies on average by January 3rd. People
Yep,
lose their resolutions. I want
sure.
to inspire transformation. So for me, like one of my internal monikers for myself is I'm a catalyst for change. Like I want to help be that linchpin for someone that actually makes a change in their life. Doesn't just inspire them or motivate them, but actually encourages them and empowers them to make a change. And that's where the transformation comes in, where I leave people different. And Bob Proctor calls it an impression of increase. Like when you're with somebody, you leave them feeling like, man, they can do more and they can be more because of being in your presence.
So true. I love that. And what do you think you've obviously had a lot of people on your show. You've gone through a crazy transformation, literally yourself from the insane story back in 2018 to overcoming that, starting the show, building a following. What do you feel like as far as, practitioners and entrepreneurs really, what do you feel like the most common mindset blocks are that you're seeing? Like what is that glass
Yeah.
ceiling and how are people creating? Is it fear mostly? Is it undeservingness and maybe it not feeling worthy of the goal? Like, what are you seeing?
Right. It's all of the above. And it really comes down to belief because it happens at any level from a practitioner wanting to collect 20,000 to wanting to go to 50,000 or wanting to go to 100,000. Or I've had people that make hundreds of millions of dollars on my show but there's still a ceiling for them. And they're trying to figure out, okay, what is that level of belief? And I had Dan Martell on my show. He wrote the book Buy Back Your Time.
Sure.
And he was a really cool guest and he was just really humble dude. We did an in-person interview and he talks about the person you need to become is not who you are today. Like the person, the goals that you have, the person you need to become isn't who you are today. Like you need to change in order to hit those goals. So I think that's what it comes down to is figuring out, okay, if this is our goal, we want to hit this, who do we need to become? And there's 2 important questions I love to ask people. And the first one was the hardest is what do you want? Because most people aren't very clear on what they actually want. So spend the time, process what do you want? Most of the time, I ask people what they want. They just tell me all the things I don't want. Well, I don't want to have these hours or work with these type of people or do this or do that. Well, get very clear on what do you want. And then the second question is who do you need to become? Figure out what do you want, and then who do you need to become in order to achieve that? And then it might be you need to learn a new skill, or master some new habits. Like there's different things, but create a vision in your mind of what it looks like to be the person that can hit that goal. And I think that's where it starts.
Yeah, very elegantly said. The I was listening to a show recently, Andy Frisella, Real AF. We were just talking about him before our show together. He said that, the success you experience today is not from the actions you certainly took today. It's from the actions you took many, many moons ago. And so I think that there's a
Right.
level of like, and you've had to do this in your own career, but it seems like every time you want to go to a new level or a change of level or make some sort of transformational thing in your life, you have to literally like redefine your own personal identity.
Right. Yeah. Yep. It all comes down to identity. And I'll give a real one for me because being a chiropractor by trade, I blew my shoulder out adjusting. And my wife and I, we had a high volume clinic and I would adjust, my shoulder would go out the back and I would step back, pop my shoulder back in and keep adjusting.
Uh,
And that was the mindset, man. We were changing lives. But it got to the point I couldn't even lift my arm. Like it got so bad. I thought I was going to have surgery. Thankfully, stem cell helped heal it up. But there was a whole period I couldn't even lift my arm. I definitely couldn't lay my hands on patients. So I went through this period of like, man, I can't physically be a chiropractor. So there was this kind of dark period of like, well, what can I do? And what I realized is I had made my identity being a chiropractor. But being a chiropractor wasn't who I am. That's just what I do. Who I am is a person who's called to change lives of other people. Chiropractic was just a vehicle of that I was doing that through. And I think too many people identify in their career, in their job, identify as who they are as a husband or a wife, but really you need to find out deep down who are you? Because we kind of put ourselves into a box based on our past experiences, our own limiting beliefs, our doubts, the things, and we kind of create this facade of who we are. But our identity is based on who we think it is. So my identity in that season was being a chiropractor. But really, the deeper layer was no, I'm here to change lives. And that can be through chiropractic, that could be through speaking, that could be through different things. But when we allow ourselves to shift our identity to something bigger, then that kind of raises that ceiling. I like to look at it like a thermostat. Like if the thermostat is set on 70, and if it gets too hot, the air conditioner kicks in, or if it gets too cold, the heat kicks up. But it tries to keep you right here. That's the same thing we do, whether it's finances. You see this a lot working with practitioners. They go up and down. They'll have a good month and then they'll have a bad month and a good month and a bad month. And it levels out about the same because they haven't shifted their financial thermostat to be able to become their identity in someone who collects a higher amount. So I think we've got to do that in business. We've got to do that in our personal lives, shifting our identity and who we believe we are. It starts with having a vision of that first. Like have a vision of who you want to become. And then I don't like fake it till you make it. I like believe it until you become it. Every day, set the vision and start to believe and start to see yourself accomplishing it. And the more you replay that in your mind, I'm big on mental rehearsal. The more you start to rehearse it in your mind can't tell the difference between something real or something vividly imagined. And there's some studies I love to talk about there, but that's what it comes down to, man. You got to have the vision of a new identity and then start to believe it.
So I'd love to, if we can linger on that all day. I feel like we should talk a little bit about the process of visualization, though, because
Yeah.
that part I've heard many times where it's like the brain can't tell that separation of like what's
Yeah.
true and what's not true, what's reality and what's not reality. How have you used that in your own brand to see where you're at today?
Yeah, because there's a couple studies. Like one, they took basketball players
Hmm.
and they wanted to test their free throw shooting ability. So, hey, group one, I want you to shoot free throws every single day for 30 days. Group two, don't touch a basketball. Let's see what happens. Group three, you're not going to touch a basketball, but in your mind, every single day for 30 days, you're going to vividly imagine shooting a basketball. And this is different from visualization, just seeing yourself on a screen. You want to actually put yourself in the moment. Feel what it feels like to hold the ball. Hear the sound of you dribbling it on the court. Feel what it feels like to shoot and follow through. See it going through the air. Hear the sound of the ball going through the net. The more you get your senses involved, the heightened the actual visualization can be. So they would do that every single day for 30 days. And at the end of the study, group one that shot free throws every day got 24% better. The group that didn't shoot didn't get any better. But the third group that didn't touch a basketball but vividly imagined got 23% better. only 1% difference than the people that actually shot every single day. That's the power of the mind. And Joe Dispenza talks about a study as well where they took people who couldn't play the piano and they taught them one-handed piano exercises. Group one, play these exercises every day. Group two, you're not going to touch a piano, but you're going to vividly imagine it. And with that group, they actually did functional MRIs of their brains. And the exact same parts of the brain was firing and people physically playing in the group that were just vividly imagining it. So if that can happen in playing the piano or playing basketball, imagine what you could accomplish in your life if you start applying. And I did this in my own TED Talks. Like my last TED Talk was how I overcame my fear of public speaking. Like for most of my life, I had a tremendous fear of public speaking. And even I shared in my TED Talk going all the way back to the second grade and being made fun of, like having to read in front of the class, to fast forward in college, almost failed a speech class because I had a panic attack during my speech. And all that anchored into my mind was, you suck as a speaker. You should never do this. This isn't for you. So I had to rewire my nervous system to be like, no, I can do this. So visualization was a huge key in that. Seeing myself on stage, looking out, seeing people nodding as I'm speaking, and feeling what it feels like to just crush a speech and people give me a standing ovation. People ask me all this time, like, when did you become a speaker? I became a speaker in my mind long before I ever stepped on a stage. And it was just vividly rehearsing until I believed I could be a speaker, and then I became one.
So everybody who's listening that thought that the whole visualization process was a hoax, there's now some statistics that say otherwise. I think that it's just the brain. How much do you think masterminding, to be clear, like there's kind of like your own internal mastermind, right? There's like,
Yep.
hey, I'm going to visualize where I'm going. You went from not being a speaker to being a very prominent speaker, right? I'm taking
Yep.
my practice from 80,000 a month. I'm going to visualize double 160,000 a month, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so in your own process, like to becoming and kind of in search of excellence, which you clearly define, what would you say have been some of like, as you started creating content, some of like your maybe biggest like down points, right? That you have second guesses, right? Criticism, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. So
So what?
always like you're always going to question, like, is anybody going to listen to this? And you can get caught up in how many views does this get or how many likes did it get? Does anybody care? Is anybody listening? We all feel that. So if you've ever felt that, you're not alone. And a guy that actually helped me with a mindset shift on this, he had me on his podcast. And when it comes to podcast numbers, like dude gets 50,000 downloads a month. Like that's a lot of podcasts.
Significant. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, and he's like had over 10 million downloads over the course of his podcast. But he said he almost gave up. For the first 9 months, he was getting like 50 total a month, not 50,000 a month, 50. And he was questioning, like, nobody's listening. Why am I even doing this? And then about 9 months in, he got an email from a guy in Japan. And he said, because of your podcast, I didn't take my own life. And he said, from that moment on, I didn't care if one person is listening, 1,000, 10,000, I'm going to show up and I'm going to deliver. So that's where I kind of shifted my mind too. It was like, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not going to question how many people are watching it and all these things because that can drive you crazy. And it's good. I mean, you're the marketer. You got to optimize and tweak things and make it better. Like you can always do that. But as far as judging yourself and beating yourself up, man, you just got to let it go and move on. Something I learned from Jack Canfield a long time ago is SW, 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 SW. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. So it's like, who cares if people judge you? Some will like you, some won't. But so what? Someone's waiting to hear your message. So just keep putting it out there. And I think that's what's helped me be successful with it is I just didn't stop. I just kept going and kept putting stuff out there.
It's the classic case of people thinking their way out of success, right?
Mhm.
Like
Right.
it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put this show out. That's cool. That's the first order consequence, right? Second order is that there's going to be people that shame me. They're going to be like, oh, they're going to be haters in the comments and might like my message. So they create all these right now fictional problems, literally, because they don't
Yep.
exist yet. And then that's the reason there's no action, which is back to the way you identify. Is you identify with somebody who's going to let that stuff kind of bring you back down instead of identifying as something that's like, yo, I'm just going to put my shit out.
Yeah, and it all starts in the mind. It reminds me of my first TED talk, I shared the Mark Twain quote where he says, I've lived a life of many troubles. Most of them never happened. because it happens in our mind. We create the problems. Well, what if this happens, or nobody watches, or all the things that could happen when they haven't even happened yet?
Mhm.
Versus, no, let me just put it out there and just keep putting it out there. That's the thing. You got to just keep showing up.
Yeah. And how much to be like, let's get a little tactical if you don't mind. I mean, so like, let's say docs listen, they're like, man, I got a lot more to share, even a non-doc for that, but for that particular matter. Someone's just like, yeah, Dr. Justin, he's got me motivated to start my own show. What would be some tactical things in terms of like, should we be putting out an episode a week? Should we be putting out like more than one a week? Like, what has been the frequency for you to kind of grow on the podcast side?
Yeah, and I think this goes. I heard, was it the CEO of Instagram that puts out stuff of like about algorithm, and people were asking him, "What's the frequency we should post?" And he said, "You need to have a schedule that you can stick to, because if you try to post 3 times a day and that just overwhelms you and you stop posting, then it's not going to help." So ideally, for like podcasts, a weekly show or every other week is good. I mean, some people do twice a week. Some people do daily shows and like little small snippets, but it's really whatever you can commit to. And the cool thing about a podcast is different ways. Like you can do your own expertise. Like if you want, you've got a message to share, you can put that stuff out there. But a cool way to just start a podcast is interview style. You just have a conversation with cool people. And that's what
100%.
I love about it, because I get to connect with cool people like Jeff, with all the people I've interviewed or people that have had me on their show. It's just having conversations with cool people. And then it opens the door to other people. And they're like, hey, come on my show. Or hey, you should have this person on your show. It just creates this cool network of people that leads to business opportunities and different things down the road. And definitely for practice owners too. I noticed, and my show wasn't about health or chiropractic. Like I started the Mindset Doctor podcast, just sharing mindset, leadership, personal development stuff. But people in my community viewed me as an authority. So people wanted to come to my clinic and support what I'm doing by being patients in our clinic because they saw what I was doing and they're like, man, that's awesome what you're doing there. I'm going to come support you in the clinic.
Yeah, it's genius. I think the podcast is like number one, it's insanely good for just like connection. I mean, like even before you and I connected, I already feel like I kind of knew you because I'd watched a lot of your stuff. Gary Vee talked about that. He's like, people will come up to me in the way they interact with me. It's not like we're first meeting. It's like we've
Right.
known forever. So that's an interesting thing about consuming content, though, is that when you do, like, although they're not getting to know you, you're getting to know them. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Well, and the
So,
cool thing too, just for us personally, the first time we met, like we had
mhm.
mutual friends that we were following each other and their content. So it's like we actually felt like we knew each other when we met the first time.
I know it's that's the power of it too. So it's insanely good for nurture, but it's what you alluded to it, and I think a lot of docs could get so much value from this strategy. Is like if and I to be give credit, I got this from Sean Dill.
Mhm.
He talks about, hey, if you're a local doc in Milwaukee, you start a show called MKE Now, and you interview like people that have families and sports teams, so like star athletes at high schools, right? Then the parents start listening. They're like, oh my gosh, what's this chiropractor do? Like it's the best in terms of like getting access to other people of all time. You're just like, hey,
Absolutely.
because you could reach out and be like, hey man, can I pick your brain? Like I follow you all the time. I saw you had Taylor Welch on your show.
Yeah.
So like you
Yep.
could reach out to Taylor and be like, hey, like I'd love to get 5 minutes to pick your brain. Or it's like, hey, dude, I got this platform. I'd love for you to come share your perspective. Like, what are you more likely to get a yes to?
Yeah. And it's cool, especially I like to call it borrowing other people's audience. So let's
Mm-hmm.
say you got the who's who in your town, you get to have them on your show. Well, when you share the episode and you share clips, that person's going to share it. And then people in your town that they look up and they respect that person, they're going to associate you with them. So you get to borrow that person's audience and get eyeballs on you. And they're like, oh, well, what do you do? Oh, you got this clinic over here. Let me check that. And then they start going down the rabbit hole of what you do over there. So yeah, it's a
It,
powerful platform.
it is, man. It is very excellent. One other thing I wanted to ask you, like, what would you consider so far? I mean, I know your journey is just beginning. We talked about this transformational vision. You're always reinventing your identity. What have you considered to be the most fulfilling part of your journey so far out of everything you've done?
Oh, that's a good question. One, I think doing a TED talk, because that was always a bucket list thing. I remember, I think it was 2011-ish. I remember watching Simon Sinek's Start With Why was a TEDx talk that he did on a whiteboard, just drawing these little circles. I think he called it the golden grid, but just talking about you got to start with why. Like not how and all the things, just start with why. And that one idea changed the world. So I was like, man, if one day I could speak on that platform, especially for me, somebody had was terrified of public speaking.
Mhm.
And I shared this in my last TED talk. I was like, if you would have told me years ago, I would be standing on this iconic red circle sharing my message with the world, I would have said you were crazy. But I'm here. And like, if I can do that, you can do it. So I think that for me was like that moment, like, man, look, going back to what we talked about earlier, that was me having to have an identity shift. I could have held on to the identity that no, you can't be a speaker, leave that to other people. That's not for you. But I shifted my identity and was able to do that. And that's why I want to inspire others to do it. And the cool thing, the first TED Talk I did was more about purpose. I shared lessons I learned from my near death accident. And a lady commented on the video and said, my 9-year-old daughter watched the video and she told me now she wants to wake up with a purpose. I was like, how
That's
cool is
so cool.
that? Like you never know what kind of impact you can make. So I think that's the rewarding part of all of it.
Amazing, man. Those are the stories that like again, you only do it for you only need to do it for one person. You know, it's back
Mm.
to just like it's so transformational to one person. And it's the same as like patients in clinics. You know, they come with all these troubles and then it's like you can literally change your life. It's back to podcasting and even back to just crazy good marketing like we do at CGA, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the future identity look for you though? So now let's future pace. So now how do you see your own self shifting as your platform continues to grow, as you continue to expand?
Yeah, because I've been doing this for a while now and I met some really cool people. And now I'm really just trying to give back to the chiropractic profession as well. So I'm going to
Cool.
be starting a show for chiropractors soon, just simplified practice solutions. I was telling you about the idea, I think last time we were in person. So I'm going to have you on the show. I'm going to have different experts within the chiropractic profession just pouring into chiros and just saying, hey, you want to grow your practice? Here's my expertise, and I just want to share it with you. So that's my heart project right now is like, yeah, I just want to help give back to the profession.
Super cool, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here.
Yeah, man.
I think I think you bring a very interesting perspective. Our show was so like data driven and marketing driven and sales, but it's like everything foundationally is how you identify what you visualize and how willing you are to go and get that, you know? So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys. I'm going to make usually I ask, you know, Dr. Justin, he's going to share where you can find him, but I'm going to make one encouragement is that in the show notes, we're going to put a link to his latest TED Talk. Again, that one's got over 175,000 views and counting. So I really want to just, you know, from the host, make an honest plug and say, check this guy out. Dr. Justin, he knows his stuff. And obviously there's a lot of good material in that TED Talk. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the view count that it has. So check that out. And then, Justin, if people want to get in touch with you, my man, where can they find you?
Yeah, Instagram, I'm very active on that. So at Dr. Justin Moseley, or you can go to drjustinmoseley.com. And yeah, like he was saying, if you just go to YouTube, put in Justin Moseley, and you'll find my TED Talk there. I would appreciate the help with that. If you spread the word, whether you have the fear of public speaking or not, it's still for you. I had people that are speaking coaches saying, man, I got something I'm going to take and use this with my people. And the real message behind all of that talk is I believe everyone's got a message to share. There is a message inside of you the world is waiting to hear. And I want to encourage more people to get their message out there. And one, get it out there. And then people like Jeff can help amplify it with the marketing side of it. So, yeah, I get nothing for people watching my TED Talk, but it helps just share it to more people, boost the algorithm. Let's see how far it can go.
100%, dude. Absolutely love it, guys. Make sure you check that out. We'll put Justin's Instagram in there. And if you want to engage directly with him, he's active on Instagram, as he mentioned. Appreciate you being here, my man. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Love it, man. And yeah, I'm gonna be getting you on my show as well.
Looking forward to it, guys. If you guys got value from the show, which I know you did today, make sure you hit that share button, pay it forward. Somebody who needs to hear it. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Appreciate you being here. Until next time. Cheers.